welcome to this latest edition in the ongoing series by The Elephant of conversations with leading public intellectuals on the ongoing situation around COVID in the world. But this evening is my singular honor to be able to welcome my friend, Professor Makau Mutua. He is all Kenyans know Professor Mutua. He is a professor of law, just the immediate former dean of the law school at the State University of New York at Buffalo. Additionally, he is the founder of the Kenya Human Rights Commission, chairman of the Kenya Human Rights Commission, and somebody who has been at the center of the struggle for freedom and democracy in Kenya over the last 30 years, and was at one point, Professor, I believe, forced into exile in Tanzania.
That is true. That is true.
So you've come a long way to through Harvard to the State University of New York, Dean of the Law School. Yeah, one of those 0.something% of Africans who shoot to the top in the US. Karibu sana.
Asante. That is quite a mouthful, but I thank you for it.
Thanks, Prof. Let me start by asking you. We're speaking. You're in Buffalo, New York.
Yes.
And how are you doing? How are you? How's your family? The whole world is consumed by coronavirus. How are you guys coping? How's your department doing? How's work?
Yeah. First of all, let me just thank you very much for asking me to join you today to have this conversation with you. I take singular privilege in being your guest because I know that the Elephant has become a great forum for Kenyans to express their views and others, Kenyans and others across the board. So I feel a particular privilege to be invited to be here. Of course, we speak in the midst of a very terrible malady, this pandemic that has wreaked havoc and changed essentially our way of life, I think, across the globe. Today, I speak to you in the backdrop of a very grim milestone. I think today we passed 150,000 deaths in the United States.
Yeah.
And this is not to mention, of course, the other lives that have been lost in other countries across the globe. So it's a very, very difficult time for all of us. Of course, New York was the first, state to really experience a huge spike in the pandemic in the United States. Luckily, it's been gotten under control. The curve, as they like to say, has been flattened in this state. And so we are knocking on wood that we'll keep, the measures that have been spelled out by the CDC and the WHO, social distancing, wearing masks, washing hands, not congregating, and so on, just to make sure that we keep ourselves safe. We've been safe. My family is fine. My kids are fine. My wife is fine. And the school is fine, although it is still closed. So thank you for asking.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, Prof. Perhaps, I'll just leap into it, if you don't mind.
Sure.
As you said, you were born ready. So let me bring our focus to the Building Bridges initiative.
Mm-hmm.
As you know, it is all the rage here. Lots of discussions around the imminent release of the report of the BBI task force and discussions as to the recommendations it's going to make, which may mean changes to our constitution, and that this has stirred up some controversy about which you have opined. And but I wanted to ask you, Prof, what does a successful Building Bridges initiative look like what would come out at the end of it? Even if it doesn't mean a constitutional change. What does that, because there's been a lot of focus on the dangers of this process. But if it was to do the right thing, if it was to deliver something positive to the Kenyan people, what would that be, and how would this instrument work?
Yeah, first of all, the lesson of history, the big lesson of history here is that sort of events or happenings that are highly heralded tend to be disappointing in their outcome. So we should approach sort of the, if you will, the noise around BBI with some caution. And especially when we're talking about reforming the African state, formulating it. What we've seen is that usually there's a lot of bang, but at the end, the state remains a very stubborn institution to reform this. So, for example, we had the 2010 Constitution. This was a long-running exercise, as you know, going back 30 years in some cases in Kenya. We got the Constitution in 2010. But surely no Kenyan can look me in the face and tell me that there has been a dramatic change in the character and the nature of the Kenyan state. So we should frame BBI in that context. BBI is a drop in the ocean in terms of this long experiment of reforming the Kenyan state. I know that there's a lot of excitement, but the excitement is something that we should also put into context, because people are excited about it simply because they have taken political sides. There is obviously on one side, Mr. Ruto and his, as I like to call it, his brigand. And on the other side, you have Mr. Kenyatta and Mr. Odinga. And so the excitement really is about the contest between these two, which gave BBI some spark. In reality, what we as public intellectuals, as thinkers, and as people who are participating in this movement should be thinking about is there in BBI?
Yes.
Really, just apart from these, if you will, conniptions and hysterics about who is involved and who is who's going to be disadvantaged and advantaged by the exercise. If we see it that way, we shall tame our irrational exuberance about it, on the one hand, or even our sort of high-pitched sort of denunciation of the exercise. We should be more deliberate, in my view, and see that this as one very tiny movement of the needle, in either direction, whether it's forward-looking exercise or backward-looking exercise in terms of its contribution, to Kenyan constitutionalism. At the end of the day, we may end up with an arrangement that simply moves one or two chairs, on the chessboard. But if you look at the chessboard, if you look at the state of play, no one may really be advantaged all that much. And by no one here, I'm not really talking about the political players. I'm talking about the common mwananchi. So one of the issues that I think have been bandied around has been on the question of the creation of an expanded executive to eliminate this notion, whether fictional or not, of a winner-take-all, so that we can accommodate the 5 largest groups in the country, so that because they are the ones who cause mayhem at the end of every electoral cycle, because one of their own is not at the pinnacle of the state or summit of the state. And so the idea is, at least the theory, is that if you can put these people in one basket and accommodate them there, no community will be able to have a legitimate, complaint. That doesn't do anything really for the common mwananchi. It might buy us a little peace because there'll be less shouting on the part of particular elites. There will be obviously a more rational way for the elites to share the spoils of the state, which I think what this is about at some point. But in terms of moving the needle, what we should be looking at really is our judiciary going to be much more independent? Is it going to deliver more justice for us? Are we going to be able to protect independent institutions from the predations of the executive? Will our political parties become robust and meaningful? Shall we be able, for example, to encourage and incubate in the people in Rift Valley to see their counterparts in the coast region as their equals? Are we going to tame this animal of ethnicity, which is pejoratively referred to as tribalism? So these are the kinds of questions that I think we want to look at. When I look at BBI itself, just what has been leaked out there, I will ask people to tame their expectations and tame them substantially, and so that they will not get disappointed.
You mentioned there, Prof, that there's a sense in which the BBI initiative is an exercise in managing the 5 big troublesome ethnicities of Kenya, Kikuyu, Kalenjin, Luya, Luo, etc. And that's an argument which has gained some currency here. However, the question that is asked, for how long will all of Kenya, the rest of Kenya, when 44, 45 plus ethnicities, remain hostage to these 5 big ethnicities? That are we embarking on a process to change a constitution that we only promulgated in 2010 to suit the interests of the elites of these 5 groups, which are fairly tiny groups? I mean, these are not large elites. These are people who we've seen recycled repeatedly since the days of KANU. And
yes.
What does BBI then mean to the Samburu, the Turkana, to the Mijikenda? Is this just about Kikuyus, Kambas, Luyas, Luos, and Kalenjins? So something that purports to be an inclusion, or an exercise in inclusion, could end up being the opposite. That is a sentiment amongst people who are not members of these 5 large ethnicities.
Yeah, so I think there is credit to that as well. But I think that is also a misrepresentation on their part, not on your part, but on their part, of the concept and the practice of democracy. Democracy is an experiment, the democratic form of government. And there is nothing in democracy that, in the history of democracy, that says that democracy can and is not cruel. It's an experiment. People should understand that it's an experiment, and it's an experiment which has demons in it. It is based on certain fictions, clearly, fictions of equality between persons, one person, one vote, free speech, association, and so on. But the reason why I call these fictions is because notions of equality, for example, which are central to democracy, are very complex ideas. The one person's voice, for example, cannot really be equal to another voice, another person's voice. And democracies are also prone to capture, simply because of the values on which they are based. Concepts of free speech, for example, allow people with more resources to have louder voices. They allow those people to be able to mobilize people. So that at the end of and then there's a question of ethnicity. Democracy has not been able to deal with this demon of ethnicity because it's ruled by the majority, obviously, and democracy looks at allowing people to organize and to associate based upon their preferences. So, for example, there is nothing undemocratic about allowing white people to vote for a white person. Democracy does not disallow that. And so consequently, democracy can perpetuate rule by a tyrannical majority.
Yes.
So my point basically is that the template of democracy that we're working with today, which does not put barriers against subnational antagonisms, for example, to suppress those, is bound to leave all these other 40 groups behind these 5 groups that are trying to control the state. So what I would say, in fact, is that this notion of expanding the executive through BBI is very much in keeping with a central democratic principle, which is that the majority shall rule. I hate to put it this way and to disappoint people, but this is a sad fact. So what they did in Tanzania, as you know very well, was to manage ethnicity and democracy, where under Nyerere they decided that we shall encourage leadership to emerge from smaller groups as a way of killing this or tamping down this beast of ethnicity. It's only under Magufuli now that we've seen a person from a large community come forward, and the results are not very promising.
I have 2 questions coming from that, but I don't want to lose the train of thought. So something you mentioned with regard to judicial independence, and I know you've been fairly outspoken about where the Judicial Service Commission should sit and how it should be compromised.
Yes.
Can you give us a bit of your readout and rationale for the position that you've taken with regard to the Judicial Service Commission, which again has been the source of some intellectual agitation from this side?
Yes. Yes. No. I've seen that. I just think that there are orthodoxies that we tend to work with. Whether we are activists or whether we are intellectuals. And one of those orthodoxies that we've been working with in Kenya is that you can actually set up an independent, commission separate from the executive and the legislature, and coordinate off from encroachment by the presidency and so on and so forth. That's a traditional template. Okay.
Yes.
But in a place like Kenya, where the state is so fragile, and the state is fragile everywhere, as you've seen in the United States, but of course, the state is much more fragile in Kenya. We've seen, for example, the capture of the Judicial Service Commission by many, many, many interests. The executive has captured it. The legislature has tried to capture it. Corrupt cartels have captured it. Corrupt judges within the judiciary have captured the judiciary itself. So the threat to the judiciary is not simply from one side. It's from very, 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 very many, very many sources. And what I was trying to say there was to say, number one, because there is a cancer within the Judicial Service Commission and within the judiciary, you have mandarins in there who are gatekeepers for corruption. And some of these are very high-ranking judges. So for example, it is like asking me as a professor, at the end of the class, to evaluate myself about how I performed. and make that evaluation the principal evaluation for my course. Of course, I'll always give myself an A.
Yes.
So the Judicial Service Commission is headed by the Chief Justice. The Deputy Chief Justice is there. There are a number of judges. It cannot police itself. So there's an argument there that we should excise the JSC from the more senior judges. In the UK, for example, the judicial body is not really part of the judiciary. It's not even headed by a lawyer.
No.
It's headed, and the last time I checked, I don't think people were saying that the judiciary in the UK is captive to anyone. So that's one idea. The other idea that is clear there is that the Judicial Service Commission should not have individuals from the executive or individuals appointed by the executive within it. That's just completely and straightforwardly wrong. Or for example, from the parliament, individuals should the design of the commission, rather I should say, should be in such a way that it is completely, you make it very, very difficult for it to be captured by any one particular interest. And so the design that we have, which is what South Africans have, has not worked for us, for example. And it's worked somewhat in South Africa simply because South Africans have a higher ethical, moral fiber, than we do. They are not as corruptible as we are. As I like to tell my people in Kenya, our children learn how to pickpocket us before they can walk, because they see us pickpocketing each other all the time. So this model has not worked in my view, and so it should be changed.
Thanks, Prof. I'm sure you followed the developments in the Senate yesterday. There has been quite a bit of debate and rancor within the Senate vis-a-vis the division of revenue between the counties, and in the vote that was taken yesterday, it was anticipated that members of the ODM, after the handshake between Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta, that these two groups would be working together. That didn't seem to be the case yesterday, and it caused some people to even begin to question: well, is our, the death of the BBI initiative has been predicted many times.
Yes.
And yesterday evening was one of those times as a result of what happened in the Senate. What would Professor Makau Mutua, what does your crystal ball tell you?
Yes, first of all, it would be very sad if the purpose of the BBI initiative was to silence dissenting voices. It would be very, very sad.
Yes.
It would be an exercise in tyranny, of authoritarianism. So I'm very pleased to see senators still exercising their own conscience and voting as individuals, as opposed to be to automatons who are directed, from a remote area. But beyond that, I think the notion that you can bring about development through a formula that is based on one person, one unit of money, one person, one unit of money, in this case, the shilling, is a dangerous idea. I'm not trying to say that obviously density of population should not be an important criteria. We know that it should be. In this country where I'm sitting in the United States, that's how we get congressional seats. If one state has more people, it gets more congressional seats. It gets more money from the central government and so on. But that is not the only reason that this should happen. So for example, I would argue that one area where Kenya should really invest would be the northern region of the country. If the country is going to ward off al-Shabaab, and other forms of restiveness in the area, not to mention the long history and the legacy of marginalization in that area. If that's going to be a part of Kenya, it seems to me for a wholesome state, for a stable state, for a secure state, you want to direct money there. In fact, more than in Kiambu. Yeah, give you other examples. You may want to invest a lot of money in a coast, region, simply because it's a place where, people come from all over the world to vacation. And so for commercial reasons, you may want to promote that. The same thing with Masai Mara. I mean, that whole region. So people, I think, I've kind of checked their senses at the door, before they have this conversation in a way that is intelligent. So I think and I don't think it's rocket science, by the way, John, for all of us to think of a formula that is complex and fair, as opposed to this simplistic formula of one person, one shilling. Is as though we only have one brain cell in our heads. Now, I understand. I understand that the 1 shilling, one vote, 1 shilling, one person, idea is attractive to Mr. Kenyatta for obvious reasons. His backyard, in Mount Kenya is restive. He wants to bribe them, but he cannot bribe them and should not bribe them at the expense of other national priorities. Because I mean, it's a whole idea. It's I probably will be lambasted for saying this, but it's a whole notion in the biblical sense that to those who have more shall be given, and to those who have little, even that little shall be taken away. That is not the way we want to develop this country. Yeah,
Prof. If I was to ask, I mean, Prime Minister Raila Odinga. I've also had a chance to interact with him. He's somebody who's been at the forefront of the struggle for the new constitution and for multi-party democracy in Kenya, and been jailed for it, been detained for it, actually.
Yes.
But the handshake in 2018 gave people pause, partly because of the opacity of the agreement, and now with the BBI, it's becoming a slightly clearer. But I would ask you the question: how will history judge Raila Amolo Odinga? BBI.
Yeah, so I don't know why people's heads are exploding because of, either BBI or because of a handshake. No one's head should explode. First of all, you are dealing with politicians. The raison d'etre for a politician is to seek political power and to bring about the change that they want to see. In the country. But it's also to secure the country in such a way that there is space and room and the sort of tranquility that they need to do that, to do all those things. So seen from that context, I think the handshake was a good idea. I know there are people who are shouting from the rooftops saying that, no, let us march to State House and let us uproot these people and so on and so forth. It's an attractive idea, even for an intellectual like me. But what we've seen in the African context is that that such actions, unless they are well thought through, they can trigger, a long night of national collapse. So I'm very serious about at least retaining a modicum of functioning state in Kenya. And I think the handshake did that. Now, what can perhaps is what has given people some concern. So number one, I think was the notion that the handshake was opaque.
Yes.
And that we don't know what exactly was agreed upon. Perhaps Mr. Kenyatta wants to perpetuate himself in power. Perhaps there are other agreements there that have not been disclosed. But let me remind people that certain agreements, just by their very nature, cannot be public. They just cannot be public, because if they are public, they will not come to fruition. So any person who has sort of negotiated on an agreement knows that. That you want to keep the confidences of both parties and so on and so forth. So that's one. The second thing is that I think they told you what they were trying to do. They gave a 6, 7, 8 point plan. They said, this is our plan, to deal with corruption, to deal with this, to deal with ethnicity, and so on and so forth. So that is out in the open. Okay. But people still think that there is another secret deal behind the deal that they are looking at. And that might as well be true. These are politicians after all.
And it's a Kenyan tradition.
And it's a Kenyan tradition. But the proof of the pudding is always in the eating. So what we are going to see at the end of the day, I think, is once this thing is unveiled, and as we march towards 2022, the outlines of agreements, both public and hidden or secret or opaque, will become much more manifest to all of us. And then at that point, you shall see the chips on the board start to arrange themselves, political alliances and so on and so forth. What I would say to your question, and I think I've been answering it in a roundabout way, but what I would say with respect to Mr. Odinga is that in history, we don't judge a person by one act. Even before we know what the outcome of that act is. We don't know what the outcome of the BBI is going to be, or the outcome of the handshake is actually going to be at the end. So let's not condemn a person because of one act. Let's look at the measure of the man's history. And as I've written before, I think measured as a historical figure in the context of Kenya, in my view, he sits at the top of the pyramid of patriots. Whereas I have also said that measured within the same matrix, Mr. Ruto will sit at the bottom of the pyramid of villains. And if these are the people who are going to be marching towards 2022, then I think it will be a very interesting time for Kenya. Now, we should not, in my view, be so idealistic as to forget that politics are played out in the arena of pragmatic sort of events, where skullduggery, where sleight of hand, where money, including dirty money, where even murder and pillage take place. And this is, of course, what I think gives us in civil society pause. When people will say, why don't you guys have a candidate? And we look at the nature of politicians, we say, oh my God, that pit looks very, very bad. Do I want to get in that pit with these people? So that's part of the question. So I think, so I think that when you look at Mr. Odinga, I think we have to take a full measure of the person's, historical performance in that way. And BBI and handshake might be an important part of it, but I don't know what the outcome of that is going to be, or what it is right now. I just don't know.
One thing that's very clear is that our current constitution, the 2010 constitution, that this constitutional dispensation, where you have a president and a deputy president, and they're on a single ticket, are elected to office. Our cabinet secretaries are no longer politicians, etc., etc. A number of important changes that came about as a result of the 2010 constitution. But in hard political terms, our current constitutional dispensation means that two's company, three's a crowd. Now,
Yeah.
we have Mr. Kenyatta, the president, we have Mr. Ruto, deputy president, and we have Mr. Odinga, who is in political partnership with Mr. Kenyatta.
Yes.
The current dispensation means that one or more of those is going to go.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
they probably should go. Not just it's going to go, but should go.
What is your reading? If two companies and three's a crowd, there are three. How do you see the next 18 months playing out?
Yeah. So power is never given; it's always taken. We saw a powerful man like Mr. Kibaki try many times to get to the pinnacle of the state. And every time he thought he was there, he was kicked in the mouth and sent back to square one.
Yes.
We've seen Mr. Odinga really suffer this fate for most of his life, for most of his political life. Mr. Kenyatta suffered the same fate in 2002. They sent him back to the drawing board. It seems to me that to capture political power in Kenya, you have either to capture two things. You have to capture the imagination of Wanjiku or Nyango, for that matter. You have to capture the imagination of, the children of lesser gods, the smallest among us, because we are the voters.
Yes.
You have to capture those.
Yeah.
But you have to capture those in such an overwhelming number and in such a wave that the second possibility does not come into play. And the second possibility is the deep state essentially selecting who is going to be the successor of the current, person in power.
Yes.
So, for example, what we saw this clearly in 2002.
Yes.
Wherewithal the machinery of the state and the wherewithal of incumbency for a quarter century, Mr. Moi was defeated alongside his protege, Mr. Kenyatta. Because it's a wave election.
Yes.
It's clearly a wave election. And in a wave election, the deep state has very little to say.
Yes.
Yeah, because even children in the village know exactly what the outcome is going to be in a wave election.
Yes.
If 2022 becomes a wave election,
yes,
then all bets are off.
Okay.
Yeah, and anyone who can capture the imagination of the people can become the head of state. Okay, but if there's no wave election, if there is no zeitgeist,
yes,
sort of this idea of a people's consciousness, well, they decide this is what we are going to do.
Yes.
Remember in 2002, it was Yote was a kind of Bilamor.
Yes.
Yeah, that kind of notion. If that is not there, we can expect, a candidate who is anointed by a combination of Mr. Kenyatta and Mr. Odinga to succeed Mr. Kenyatta. Mr. Ruto is not going to be able to wrest the state, and I say the deep state from Mr. Kenyatta, just by, buying clerics, or drowning or bathing the church in loot. He wouldn't do that by trying to capture Jubilee. That's not a winning situation. And he wouldn't even do that by trying to buy civil society, which is not trying to do. That will not happen. For him, if the status quo holds and there's no wave election, he may not become, he may not even be a candidate in that case. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because his only chance of getting the presidency, absent a wave election in which the people will swoop him into power, will be for him to take the state away from Mr. Kenyatta and turn the deep state into his own handmaiden. And I don't see him taking the state from Mr. Kenyatta
Yes.
And because as we know, there was this notion in 2017, the faranga for your computer.
Yes.
This notion of these little animals in the computer that count the votes.
Yes.
So you have to capture that. And from the look of things, from what we are seeing on the political landscape, is that Mr. Ruto is already out of power. He's not even deputy president.
Yes.
There's a seat there, but he's not occupying it.
Thanks, Prof. How does Uhuru Kenyatta salvage his presidency? I mean, it's been a torrid 2 terms. Unprecedented levels of corruption, which he's been rhetorically very strong about, but it's out of control. Even now that we have COVID, we're having scandals around the procurement of COVID-related mitigation equipment, etc. So this kind of free-for-all has set in and has become extremely strong, and is very much associated with his administration, regardless of him making very positive statements about dealing with it. And then we had an election process in 2017 that was a disaster, that left the administration without much legitimacy. The first election was nullified by the Supreme Court, and the second election in October of 2017 was boycotted by so many Kenyans that it sort of sucked the legitimacy out of the regime. How does it? There's not much time left. How does he salvage his legacy or what remains of it?
Yeah, I don't think Mr. Kenyatta was ever a legitimate president.
Okay.
He was not legitimately elected in 2013, and he was not legitimately elected in 2017. So first of all, that is his legacy to start with.
Yes.
The legacy of illegitimacy in the office of the president.
Yeah.
Okay. So we start from there.
Yeah.
But as I've said before, one can start as an illegitimate president.
Yes.
And become legitimate.
Yeah.
Because these are political processes.
Correct.
Yeah, so for example, we've seen coup d'etats, people overthrow governments and they become heroes and they get embraced by people. Thomas Sankara and others, it's all very clear, it happens. Fidel Castro and others, it all happens. You overthrow a situation and you capture power. So, but I think once he got in, I do not think that Mr. Kenyatta had an idea about how to run a state. He, I think, employed cronies. He reverted to, comfort zones of employing and promoting people from his own ethnic background, together with Mr. Ruto. I think they spent too much time trying to fend off, the ICC. The Chinese took advantage of that, and the Chinese saw an opportunity, and they plied him with loans. Yeah. He's up to his neck with them, and in fact, Kenya is the one that is drowning, not him. He has made sputtering efforts at fighting corruption, which I think have not been successful at all. He belatedly tried to do the handshake with Mr. Odinga to address that particular rift, and I applauded that as a good move. And I thought that he would then take advantage of that particular rapprochement to really do great things. He hasn't. So in essence, what I'm trying to say is that, of course, Mr. Kenyatta has a legacy, but it's horrid. And he doesn't have the time. There have been opportunities for him to reverse it, to regain legitimacy, and to make a contribution, lasting contribution as a Kenyan leader. However, he has failed to do that, to capture that moment for any number of reasons. I think obviously his partnership with Mr. Ruto was fraught with problems. Mr. Ruto essentially it captured him, and so he was not able to do his own things. But that's not to apologize for him. He's a head of state. He should be able to run the state without a co-president. So if someone else took power that he was supposed to have, that actually says bad things about him. So the legacy that he has is horrid. Does he have 2 years to correct this legacy? I don't think so.
No.
My view is that the clock has run out.
Yeah.
What is likely to happen, in my view, is for him to craft a succession plan, that can give him credit.
Yes.
Yeah. Whatever else he does not have in terms of legacy, he still has the ability, because he controls the levers of the state, and there's no wave election.
Yes.
Which would disrupt him. Yes. He has the levers of power to determine who succeeds him. And this is where I think perhaps he has a window to leave us with something that we can, that will give us permission to say that it was not all a disaster.
Yes.
Yeah. So if he tries to force Kenyans to pick a leader who is not, up to the task, or who would not perhaps do the kinds of things that he himself said he would do, which in fact were great things, fight corruption, end ethnicity, and so on and so forth, re-engineer our political system and so on in ways that would end this cycle of violence. If he gets someone who can do that, then I think, we'll be able to say, at least he got one thing right. So far he's gotten most of the things that he's tried to do wrong. And that's a very, very poor legacy. And it's a young man. It's one thing for your legacy to be shot when you are 80 years of age, like Mr. Kibaki. You might go back to Othaya and forget that you're even president because of age. But Mr. Kenyatta will not be able to forget that he was president because he's a young man. He'll have to live with his own messy handiwork. And that's the problem, for him. Yeah. And I hope, by the way, I should say here, parenthetically, that I hope that what his detractors are saying, that he wants to perpetuate himself in power either as prime minister or in another position, that would be a disaster. Yeah. And I don't know why he would be such a glutton for punishment. In that case, he would be punishing Kenyans as much as he would be punishing himself.
One final question, Prof, and I'm sure we'll be coming back to you again. There's many questions here that I have not been able to touch on. But you have been mentioned as somebody who would stand for, present yourself to stand as President of the Republic of Kenya.
Yes.
2022.
Yes.
Can you answer that question definitively? Is that something that you're thinking about, contemplating, planning?
Yeah. Yeah. So let me say that it's actually the duty of every Kenyan who is eligible and who is viable to run for office to listen to what Kenyans want and to decide if they want to offer themselves for leadership. But let us remember also that there are a lot of self-declared candidates. We saw a parade of cartoonish candidates in the last election. And this is turning out to be no different. I have, there's now on the political stage already some cartoons who want to run for the presidency. I think it's dangerous to give power to people who want it too much.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just dangerous. I think you want to give power to people who are reluctant to have it. I'm a student of constitutional law, I'm a student of government and so on. My view is that as a citizen of my country, I am ready and prepared to offer my candidacy if it's asked for, and to serve my country if my country will ask me to serve it through a popular plebiscite. But beyond that, I can only say that if there is someone else who would embody my own values and visions and plans for Kenya, I would also very happily vote for that person. For me, the presidency is not a do or die. It is an office that you take that office to serve the people, not to serve yourself. And so far, I have to say that the people who have been talking, none of them really wants to serve the people. They want to serve themselves, because virtually all of them have pilfered public funds or participated in projects of destroying Kenya as a country, including some pogroms that we know about.
Yes.
They killed people and so on. So those are not individuals that anyone should be trying to elect. But I do know that that our country has there's an undercurrent there in our country among our people where the rogue, the thief, the criminal who has enriched himself unjustly is sometimes looked upon with admiration by our people. Mm. So I would say there's a little gene of fascism sometimes in our people. And this gene of fascism worries me a lot.
That's very alarming.
Yeah, it's very alarming, but it's there in many countries. I mean, look at Trump. Trump would not be possible unless there was a gene of fascism in a very large segment of the American population. So this does exist. I'm not singling out Kenya as some pariah state where people are fascistic only. Fascists and proto-fascists exist in many populations across the globe, and we've continued to elect such people into high office, whether it is at the MCA level, at the parliamentary level, at the presidential level. We've done that. Yeah. And I hope that we can do something different in 2022.
Professor Makau Mutua, all the way from Buffalo in New York. Asante sana, a Kenyan patriot and one of our leading public intellectuals. Thank you so much for your time, Prof. As I said, I'm booking you. I'll be coming back to you. You've said a number of pretty strong things there in a rapidly unfolding political situation. So I'll be coming to seek your counsel again as events continue to unfold. And we
I'll be happy to talk to you even every day if you so wish. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Prof, and all the best to you. Stay safe, you and your entire family.
Shukran.
Asante.
Asante.